Hey, and welcome to Hitogify. Today we're going to break down the eras of Kiss, and I will argue that it's a lot more than makeup, non-makeup years. Let's get into it. Okay, so people tend to put Kiss into the makeup years to non-makeup years, and I think there's more to that, or first three albums, second three albums, and so on. But I think we have to break it down just a little bit more than that. Let's get into this. So I I've broken the Kiss eras down into actually 7, I believe, different eras: Raw, Polished, Super Kiss, Lost, Return, In the Weeds, and Modern. So, if you know Into the Woods, Life in the Woods, I thought that'd be funny, In the Weeds. Anyway, let's go through these. So, Raw, the original Kiss that started it all, and then they grew. Finally, there was Super Kiss, where not only were they more polished, but they were almost caricatures of themselves are so big, then they kind of lost their way. They return, uh, and we'll get into that. That's when we're talking about the makeup years or the non-makeup years. Then they lost their way again, and finally we got the modern Kiss, which people argue both ways. They're lost or they're not. Whatever. Let's start with Raw. Raw is obviously the first three albums and Alive. The Kiss had started it all, right? And before they really struck it big. After that, after Alive, that set everything off. They had something to prove. We go to the polished era, which obviously starts with Destroyer and follows those three albums up to the second live album. Both these eras are amazing, but very different. The quality of the recording alone is a big part of it, which arguably could start at the with the first Alive album when they got Eddie Kramer in there. But let's go on to next. What happened after Polished? After Polished, they turned into Super Kiss. This is when Kiss was they ruled the earth, and we're talking um, the solo albums, which we all know now was sort of a way to hopefully keep them from breaking up. But releasing four simultaneous albums from four simultaneous members, members at the same time is crazy. Then Double Platinum, where they wrapped up all that, and they came out with Dynasty, which was just showing they were coming back and had one of their biggest hits of all time with "I Was Made for Loving You," even though people said they strayed from the classic heavy Kiss that we always talked about, but people talked about that with Destroyer. I mean, Kiss was really worried about it. Brought up Rock and Roll Over, but let's go on to the next. At that point, they pretty much lost their way. That's when we go into, I would say, Unmasked and The Elder. Um, these are albums different from anything else in the Kiss catalog. Um, One, they leaned so heavily into pop that it was utterly contrary to their roots. And then The Elder, which was now they're great musicians and have to do a uh, thematic album. I'm not thinking of the right word, but these are different than anything in the Kiss catalog, except possibly one more as far as being lost or just something completely foreign to the Kiss crowd. After that, they kind of returned to their roots. I think they got back to the music, although it was far heavier. But um, starting with Killers, which was really just a response uh, that was, I believe, only released in Europe. Four songs kind of back to what they were all about from Paul, and then Creatures of the Night brought him back into the fold, although we've now lost Ace. Then we go into Lick It Up, Asylum, Animalize, which I think has returned pretty much to form, although Animalize was kind of losing its way there. But Creatures of the Night, Lick It Up, and Asylum, I think are really fantastic albums, even though they're very distinct from one another. After they returned to form, they were really rocking out. They sort of drifted off into the weeds. I think Crazy Nights was a departure entirely. I would rather listen to Unmasked than Crazy Nights, but that's me. But even if you don't look at that, it is a whole different level there. But so they went to completely polished with Ron Nevison producing to completely raw with Hot in the Shade, which wasn't even produced, or really they were the demos. Then they go to Revenge, where they go, let's go back to our roots to what we did with Destroyer, except it is nothing like Destroyer. So now they've gone ultra heavy in a way, and then we go into Carnival of Souls, which they were leaning farther into that. But at no point during this time do I feel they were the original Kiss. When you have Take It Off on Revenge instead of, I mean, Love Gun at least had very, very little subtlety, but some subtlety. Take It Off has none. Take Off Your Clothes. I mean, that was it. And I don't know. This whole era, I think they were still finding their way and chasing other bands or whatever. Um, After that, we get to the modern era, which is everything since then, which everything from Psycho Circus when they returned with the original four, although we know they really didn't return with the original four. There was no writing together on that. Paul wrote his, Gene wrote his, uh, Ace and Peter were nowhere to be seen in the writing process. And then the final two, which are the new people, with Eric Singer and Tommy Thayer on those, and they did somewhat go back to their roots. I think. I mean, they're different people, but it was written as a group, four people writing together, um, and that's where we end up with. So that goes through the Raw, Polish, Super Kiss, Lost, Return, In the Weeds, and Modern. I mean, you could break these into many fewer categories or possibly even more, but I thought things make it pretty solid. If you're new to Kiss, this I think is outlines their whole thing. Coming up soon, I will do start doing versus albums, and I will look at this to do it. I'm going to take the first album of each era and compare it to the second. So how did the first one compare to the second in each era? And then I'm going to take the possibly the winners of those, and compare the finest from each era head to head against each other. Um, so anyway, I hope this was. I would love to hear people. What do you have to say about these? The way I broke this down. Is it stupid? Is it totally off track? Is there a way you would split these up differently? Because you certainly could. Dynasty could be in the Lost era if you felt. Um, or Superkiss could even be in the Lost era when they did the solo albums. Is that even in the same realm? But I think we all know of Superkiss, the Dynasty tour, that where they were larger than life and they had their colors instead of just black and silver and white. Anyway, give it a thought. I'd love to know what you think. And hey, catch me next time on Hitogify.